So I'll just check with my colleague Chris who we would have first in line, and let's go with Ankit from India today. Ankit, you have the floor.
Good evening. My name is Ankit Kumar. I represent India today. My question is on contact tracing applications. More and more countries are rolling out their own versions of these applications. Is there any data or study, or can you tell from your own experience if these applications are helpful in controlling the pandemic threat? In your opinion, should these apps be mandatory for those going out on work during the lockdowns, as the case is in India? Thank you.
Thank you, Ankit. This was about contact tracing applications.
So I could start, and perhaps Mike or DG would like to supplement. So thank you for the question. Contact tracing remains one of the fundamental tasks that need to be done to help control transmission of COVID-19. And what we mean by contact tracing is when you identify a case through your surveillance systems, that you identify all of the contacts, all of the people who are in contact with that known case, and then you follow them over 14 days. Your question was specifically about apps, and apps can supplement the work that needs to be done by people. The work that needs to be done by individuals who can go out and actually interview cases and find out who did they come in contact with just before they became symptomatic and while they were symptomatic before they were isolated. And that needs to be done by a group of individuals, and many of them are trained in epidemiology, but you don't have to be trained in epidemiology. We've seen many countries use different workforces, volunteers who are trained, school teachers we've heard of students who can help with this contact tracing. And what's important about an individual, the people that do this, is that you need to find cases through personal interaction and through interviews, all done physically distanced, of course. The apps can help, but they don't replace people who need to do that contact tracing. And what we're seeing is a lot of apps and a lot of applications that can help find people who may have been around somebody if they're using smartphones within a certain distance, and that can help narrow down the number of contacts, but it doesn't replace the individuals who actually have to go out and do the contact tracing.
Yes, just in supplement, there are different applications out there, and many countries have developed them, many consortia have developed them, and in academia and the private sector. There are apps out there that help people learn about the disease, and there's some very useful apps out there that provide better information about the disease and good information, and that also, in some cases, help people check their symptoms. In other words, allow people to get information regarding the symptoms of the disease, check their symptoms, and see if they should take further action. There are also mobility tracking applications where people doing modelling, and you've seen that with IHME in the US and other modelling institutions, where in the background they're checking the overall mobility of the population, which helps drive the modelling and prediction of disease, because clearly if people are more mobile and mixing more, you can use that to make your model more accurate about the likely future incidence of the disease. And then there are the apps that can help with contact tracing, and that's the many countries, the UK I think have just finished testing their app. What that app allows public health authorities to do is to, number one, potentially, and Korea have a similar application, is help with the tracing process. Once someone is sick, what would normally happen is they'd be tested and isolated. As part of that process, the public health authorities will ask them about who they've been in close contact with in the previous days. And that is a difficult process, remembering exactly who you spent a certain amount of time with in certain settings to see who the high-risk contacts might have been. A way to supplement that is to have an ability to use mobile phone technology that can actually remember, in a sense, for the person, because your mobile phone can remember who you were close to in the last number of days, and it can actually calculate how long you've been close to that person. So what it does is it provides an aid to memory for that process, and that can be very good. It can also be used to notify those contacts that they have been in contact with a confirmed case, which allows them to take appropriate action. For all of this to obviously work, it involves the Bluetooth function on people's mobile phones to be activated and people to accept that they wish to use this application. And I think that's where we have an opt-in process, many countries have an opt-in process for that. Each country is using a slightly different application with slightly different opt-in or opt-out processes. And obviously, countries have to take very good care of the fact that tracking people's location needs to be done for the sole purpose of COVID-19 response, and that is something that is being discussed actively in each country. From our perspective in WHO, we are working with many of these developers around the world and looking at these applications and then trying to establish applications or bots that we can offer to countries who they can adapt for their own use should they wish to. A good example of that is the Go Data application, which is a contact tracing system that allows countries to maintain a very sophisticated database of contacts, cases, lab results, and allows public health authorities to construct transmission chains and manage the whole process of contact tracing. We have made that application available to all countries, and many countries are now using that as a way of managing all of the data around cases. That does not involve individuals' mobile phones being tracked in any way. That's just purely to aid the process of contact tracing and the process of integrating all of the data. And one of the weaknesses in this whole response, or one of the challenges, has been how do you integrate data from the hospital, data from the public health system, data from the lab. And you've seen the frustrations when people say, we don't have the data, or where is the data? Very often the problem is that different parts of the health system are generating data for different purposes, and that data doesn't come together in a way that helps drive the response, and it takes time for that to happen. So applications that are assisting with that are extremely useful. So I would just like to clarify, it isn't one app, it isn't one way of doing things. Each and every one of these applications needs to be looked at by national authorities and to see how the app can help them do a better public health job of testing, tracing, tracking.